Bigger, better, bolder. The cold, hard truth is taking talk to the next level. Right here on Bobo 89.1 FM, Cayman's Community Radio. We are still spilling the tea and committed to being part of the change that Cayman so desperately needs. Join Sandy Hill weekdays from 7:30 a.m. for Premier Access, Cayman Voices, Truthful Thursdays, and much more. Cayman's #1 talk show is now bigger, better, bolder, and more than talk. Getting results with hot topics, consumer reports, court exposés, and more.
I've come to set the record straight. I've come to shine the light on you. Let me introduce myself. I am the cold, hard truth.
Now, from the CMR studio in Grand Cayman, live, direct, it's the cold, hard truth. Now, join the conversation on 345-936-2626.
That number again is
345-936-2626.
People talking. What are they talking about? This world's gone crazy, and I'm trying to find a way out. Nobody knows where we're going, or if we're going at all. Cares if we stand, if we have nowhere to fall. It's a singing symphony, playing as the ship goes down. It's a porcelain epiphany, breaking if it hits the ground. I gotta find a way out. So many questions
Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Happy Hump Day Wednesday. How are you guys doing today? Hope you're having a fantabulous week so far. Halfway through the week, basically. This is kind of the midway point, I guess. Depends on if you have a 7-day week or a 5-day week for work. But aren't we thankful this morning? Thankful we got a job, those of us who do have a job. Thankful we've got fairly good health and wellness. And we're going to be thankful here in just a minute for Dr. Carlos, who's going to be joining us. So exciting. Yes, you guys remember Dr. Carlos the last time he was on the program. We all had an amazing exchange and synergy. And I'm so looking forward to him jumping on here shortly and joining us. So in the meantime, Auntie's here in the studio holding the fort down. We're going to have a look for, oh gosh, let me see now. Looking for my apps. Ugh, Windows is always changing something around. What happened to all the apps? I can't even find them anymore. My goodness. There we go. Now we can go to all. Right. Because everything in the studio is controlled by apps these days, honey child. Lights and all sorts of stuff. Modern technology. You better keep up or you're going to get left behind. That's all I can tell you. In this day and age, it is truly amazing the pace at which it's changing. We thought it was changing fast before. No, sir. This is where it's at. So yesterday was a very, very interesting show. I do know that Minister Ebanks Wilkes is paying attention. She actually wanted to come on the show and no doubt address some of these things. But unfortunately, because we already had Dr. Carlos booked, we couldn't accommodate her today. But we will work with her team and see how soon we can get her here. So unfortunately, I wish I could say to you all that what we discussed yesterday was the end of the discussion on Poinciana Center. But what I can tell you, in fact, is it's only the beginning. Pretty wild. But yes, Poinciana Rehabilitation Center, there is so much more. Oh my gosh. You guys, make sure you tune in every day, but especially tomorrow, because tomorrow the conversation will continue. And I'm not really here to lay blame necessarily. I'm here to tell you all the cold hard truth, and then we're going to lay blame because some people have to take responsibility for why we're here. And I can tell you, as much as you guys may want to blame Minister Sabrina Turner, I think you guys will be very surprised, even what private sector has informed me about what's going on there. Previous Minister Sabrina Turner, my apologies. And so what I do know is that current Minister Kathy Wilkes has a real mess to clean up. In fact, if I were looking at the government now and I was saying, what are the two messiest sort of ministries that have when I say messy, have a lot of work to do, have a lot of, areas to try to get under control. I'm going to start with education first and then health and wellness. And when you think about those two areas, my God, if you don't have education under control and then you compound that with health and wellness, you can see why it would be a real concern to anyone what's happening in this country. Pretty wild, I must say. But that's where we're at, folks. That is exactly where we are. So imagine the education of your people being as important as it is, lacking, and then we've got health and wellness issues equally lacking. I don't even know really what to say at times. I mean, those are two extremely key areas, and they impact everything else. They have a fallout effect on every other area as well. HSA causing the entire country to have financial issues now. Somebody said to me, well, at least Lizette was able to finally get them JCT, oh Lord, what's the acronym again? It'll soon come to me. JCT, JC, whatever, accredited. And I said, well, what good does that do when we have children there who are being subject to molestation? And you think that that accreditation is going to stay in place forever? You don't think that by now somebody has reported the hot mess of a situation that's happening at HSA, including the finances, the financial position that they put the country in, as well as the fact that now we know the mental ward is being locked down again last week, and issues continue. Yeah, they may very well lose that accreditation just as well. They didn't get it easily. I was going to say just as easy as they got it, but I know they didn't get it easily. But they may very well lose that accreditation. So not going to really do anybody good. You can get an accreditation. Maintaining it might be a whole other ball game, honey child. And do you know that the general public can go there and make complaints through the JC? Oh, Lord have mercy. It'll come to me. So that's an area of real concern. So we'll continue to advise you guys of everything that's happening, because one thing I do know is no situation gets better if we just ignore it. No situation gets better if we pretend it doesn't exist. And so we are certainly not going to do that. The people deserve to know. You guys are the ones using these facilities, potentially. We never know which one of us may require Poinciana Point mental health care, or even, as parents have shared with me, having to take their child to the HSA for a mental health episode and then being told that they have to leave their child there. And I can tell you what, those parents were not comfortable doing that, and they refused to leave their JCI. Thank you so much. They refused to leave their child, and now they're looking at this whole situation saying, thank God, because they had a 13-year-old as well, young girl, and her father from East End. I can tell y'all something. That would have been a whole different cup of tea if anything had happened to that child while she was there. But the mother said, no, I'm not comfortable just leaving her like this. You haven't told me what the plan is, nothing. And you expect me to just hand my child over for 2 weeks and then tell me that the place looks better in daylight? That parent was like, what? I don't think so. So we'll continue the show tomorrow on Poinciana Rehabilitation Center. And there is so much more. I kid you not. What is so interesting is, as I'm talking about it, there are people who had complaints, who knew plenty, and they're only now reaching out to me. I'm like, where have you people been? This is the thing, folks. I can never speak on a situation that I don't know anything about. So, I don't know everything. I'm not in your brains. I'm not in your workplaces. So if you don't bring it to my attention, how am I supposed to know? Now, let me say this much. Right now, big congratulations to Misha and Corey. They had a little baby girl yesterday. She's part of the CMR team. She helps us out with social media, trying to keep that monster under control. And what I can tell you is it's a monster. So right now, if you're messaging us on social media, you're going to get a delayed response because there's only so much time I have in the day. And I really don't spend a whole lot of time on social media. I'm over here trying to run a whole empire, child, trying to get CMR TV fully off the ground. And there's a lot of moving parts. So if you need to reach me, I am actually one of the easiest people in Cayman, I suspect, that can be reached. 324-1612 is my private number. you can call me at a reasonable time of the day. Now, because I am busy, sometimes you call and I have to tell you, I'm in the middle of doing my banking, or I'm in the middle of doing something urgent, because, every year CNB has to do their little review and I have to participate, or, I'm in a meeting or something else with a client. So there are times you got to understand when I'm not available. But call me at a reasonable hour, and most times I will answer my phone and I will get back to you. That's the best way to reach me, is by WhatsApp. You can message me. And then if we need to have a phone call. Now, some of y'all want to sit down and have an audience in person. I can tell you that does not happen very often, because I just don't have that time. Y'all like, oh, let's, go sit down and have a 2-hour conversation. Be cognizant of the fact that I am a mother, a wife, a business owner, et cetera, et cetera. And so I may not have 2 hours to be able to sit down with you and hear half your life story, but I can give you 20 minutes on the phone. There's really nothing that most of you could tell me that I would not be able to, assist you with over the phone. We don't normally need to have an in-person conversation. Yes? All right, let me get all these links together to share this morning. So by all means, reach out that way, because right now, if you reach out on Instagram or WhatsApp, Instagram or Facebook, there is definitely going to be a delay as a result of we don't really have our usual person here to check those things right now. Let me just see here now. So, yes, let me just send out these links. Don't forget, we are live right now on the web, www.cmrtv.com. Call-in number for this show, 936-2626. And big congratulations to Sabrina Turner. She had her first interview yesterday with none other than the deputy governor, Mr. France Manderson. It was quite a good interview, and there were some interns on the program. And I really want to say I appreciate Mr. Manderson. He does not, like so many other people, he does not shy away from the tough questions. He will come on and he will address what he can. And he actually had the interns there with him, and it was refreshing to see the government is actually playing their part as it relates to their parts as it relates to our interns. And so very, very pleased to see that happening. And I also like the fact that he took the time to have them speak for themselves, which I thought was really, really good. Some of them said, oh my God, they're so nervous. They've never been on CMR before. Now they're on CMR TV. And, Sabrina said to them, don't be nervous. Some days I'm nervous too. Like, this didn't come natural for a lot of people, but the more you practice, the better you get. And he also, which I thought was good, allowed them to stay there the entire time so they could see him, answer the tough questions. So I thought that was fantastic as well. So kudos to the deputy governor for that. All right. Well, Dr. Carlos is ready. He's here early. So we are so pleased to have Dr. Carlos back in the studio with us. We're going to park the other conversation until tomorrow's show. So for sure, on tomorrow's show, I don't know yet if the minister will be able to come on, because I did give her the option to come on tomorrow, the health and wellness minister. So I'm not sure. Her team, I'm waiting on them to get back to me. But if she is able to come on, what we'll do is we'll accommodate her first. Then we'll continue our expose into Poinciana Rehabilitation Center with the former minister, Ms. Sabrina Turner. Because quite frankly, we have a lot of questions around mental health and wellness and how we're in the situation that we currently are. And so we, again, will have to, go a little bit deeper than we did on yesterday's show. We can't help people with mental health and wellness if we have facilities, folks, that are failing. That much I do know. So if we have staffing issues, if we have persons who are not even qualified to get the proper facilities license that the facility requires, none of that makes any sense. And so what we thought was going to be a solution, or at least a partial solution for some of the persons with mental health concerns here in the Cayman Islands, is turning out to be much more of a disaster than anybody anticipated. And that's not what we want. We haven't even put a Band-Aid on it. I think what we've done is we've actually made the situation quite worse. So we're going to go ahead and invite in Dr. Carlos this morning. Good morning, Dr. Carlos.
Hey, Sandy. So great to see you.
Let me put my headphones so I can actually hear you. That would be helpful. All right. How are you? So good to see you.
So good to see you
this morning. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Great to be back.
Yeah, in case our listeners missed you on the last occasion, I'll do just a brief introduction. Dr. Carlos is going to be a regular feature here on the program. And of course, we're pleased to introduce Dr. Carlos Garcia, a licensed clinical psychologist and founder of the Tampa Counseling and Wellness Center there. Dr. Garcia is dedicated to supporting individuals as they navigate their mental and emotional health. He specializes in a number of different areas, including trauma treatments and advanced resolution therapy, working extensively in the past with veterans, first responders, families, and couples. So he has a very compassionate approach to what he does as a profession, focusing on helping clients manage anxiety, depression, trauma, while addressing relationship dynamics and fostering self-discovery and emotional resilience. His philosophy centers on the power of self-compassion, encouraging clients to replace self-criticism with kindness and curiosity for meaningful growth and healing. And as you can see from the last time that Dr. Carlos was here, he is extremely compassionate and relatable. We get you, Dr. Carlos. We understand. There was so much that you said that really connected and resonated with our listeners. And I must tell you, what I found just absolutely fascinating is the fact that after the show, well, during the show, you saw the comments were blowing up. Mm-hmm. And after the show, the comments continued to come in, in such an amazing volume, and just the passion that people were expressing themselves with really took me aback. So I want to thank you again. Dr. Carlos is going to be having a show here as part of CMRTV.com, and we're going to do it in a bit of a transitionary phase. So I will be his co-host / producer and doing all of the behind the scenes elements. So in the initial stage, we're going to have Dr. Carlos on this program. And then we're going to do a breakout with Dr. Carlos, where in the evenings, he'll be hosting his own live show. So this is fantastic. Dr. Carlos, I cannot tell you how pleased I am to have this as one of the shows on the CMR TV lineup.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. I was really touched by just the outpouring of comments and folks sharing about their experience. It's such an honor to be here, really, and to take all of these years of what I've learned and through my own sort of human experiences to come and share with the folks, and hopefully to educate, right, and sort of just kind of share some of the ways that we can overcome some of the challenges that we experience around not only the mental health piece, but like the emotional wellness. And that's just one of the things that we need to focus on to make ourselves healthier, not only for our neighbors and our families, but for the world at large.
Yes, absolutely. It is truly a pleasure to have you here. These are some tough conversations. I mean, just yesterday, We were talking about the Poinciana Rehabilitation Center, which is supposed to be a mental health facility, but it's turning out to be a little bit of a problem. There's a lot of things going on there that shouldn't be going on in terms of the operations, patient intake. They can't do any acute cases because, again, no one talked to the licensing body to figure out what they needed in order to open that particular type of facility. So the director that they have is not the right type of director. She doesn't have the necessary qualifications. She's a nursing practitioner and not a clinical, like a doctor. So it's just a mess. And as they say, sometimes the more you dig, the more you find, right? So pretty wild. Now, I know we're going to be focusing on children this morning, but before we get into that, there are people who were messaging me between shows asking for when you're going to be back on because they had questions for you. And there was, a young man who reached out. I found this kind of interesting, who wanted some relationship advice. I wonder if we could spend a little bit of time answering his question before we then get into dealing with children. It is summer, so a lot of parents are, up to here with kids out and trying to manage everything around them, including disciplining and so on. So we'll navigate that. But his question, which I thought was an interesting one, I think, we'll do some Q&A with Dr. Carlos. I'm sure that'll be interesting and lots of fun to see how he responds. But he actually was asking me the question, and I declined to answer it because it's a little bit of a peculiar situation, Dr. Carlos, but because I have this relationship with my listeners, a lot of them, we refer to ourselves as a CMR family. We're here every morning, hundreds of people, goes up to thousands of people, and we have this connection. We have this relatability. Sometimes I see people in person and I don't actually know them, but we feel like we know each other because we're here, and they'll run up to me, kids, and they'll hug me, and but you have to remember that you don't really know me and I don't really know you. So sometimes when you ask me a personal question or even advice, I might be taken aback and that I'm like, well, maybe I'm not the right person to answer that. Yeah. And so there are lots of times I pump the brakes on people's access to me. And this is where, as a content creator, we have to protect our mental health and wellness as well. And we also have to know our limitations. I'm not a relationship expert. I'm not the psychologist here, right? So I said to this young man, when he asked me the question, I said, the perfect person for that question actually isn't me. Because he's like, oh, I'm looking for advice. And I said, I think Dr. Carlos might be able to assist you with that. So he wanted to know that if we had any sort of advice on relationships. And I said, well, that's a big topic. Specifically, what do you mean? And he said, the building blocks or steps on how to, and then ... notice if she cares for me. And then he said, it's complicated. Well, when people say it's complicated, yes, relationships are definitely complicated. But let's answer that question. How do you know if someone is just a friend or an acquaintance, or that they're more interested in you, perhaps in a romantic sense?
Sure. Yeah, Sandra, I think it's important to start off by saying two things. That today and any other time I'm on this show or whatever show we sort of spin off, that I'm always sort of one person giving an account based on my experiences, what I've studied, and that this, there's such complexities to the human experience and what we're going through psychologically, emotionally in our relationships. So just know that, like, my advice here is coming from one perspective, right? And it's always helpful to have multiple perspectives. At the end of the day, I'm giving general advice, but ultimately what probably is going to help someone most is to understand their own, what's going on for you in particular, right? So in the work that I do, I need to sit with the client and get to know them. I need to need to understand all of the aspects of who they are, how they think, how they feel, the kind of environment that they grew up in. What is your story? How do you relate to yourself and others in the world? And all of that's been crafted and molded by years and years and years of experiences and decisions. So While I'm happy to often give general advice here, just kind of know for those of us individuals out there that having someone you can talk to one-on-one is always the most helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That being said, right, like we have all of these factors that we need to consider with one human being. Now, in any talk about relationships, we need to consider it with a second human being. And this second human being has their baggage and their stories and, their projections and all of that. So, indeed, relationships are truly, truly complex. Getting to the root of what might be manifesting or happening or being maintained in both a healthy or an unhealthy way takes a lot more investigation. But what I will say, having prefaced with all of that,
Mm-hmm.
when I think about sort of the foundation blocks, for me, that is what I call doing my own work. It's
Mm-hmm.
healing myself first, understanding what I'm trying to get from a relationship, why I'm trying to get it. Is there something in a relationship that I'm trying to fulfill um, through this partner that I should be fulfilling within myself, right? Like if I don't know how to love myself and I constantly need someone else to love me, and
Mm-hmm.
without their love, I feel empty and insecure, then that tells me there's probably some work that I can do on myself first, right? And so for me, when folks come to see me and they want to understand what's going on in their relationship, I bring the focus to them. What's going on for you? What kind of pains, traumas have you had that maybe you haven't healed from? What kind of resentments? What kind of anger do you still hold on to? How do you love? How do you appreciate being loved? Right? So I know that sounds all sort of more complex, but it's just kind of the nature of the work. For me, it's so vital and important to get sort of under the hood, if you will, and really understand what the problem is from a much deeper perspective, right? But I come back to agreeing with the fact that I think we all need to always take a look at ourselves, right? And from that place, then from a much more healed place, the kinds of people that we're going to invite into our lives are all
Mm-hmm.
going to be healthier themselves.
Yes. And is it true, you think, generally speaking, that you attract, um, this whole manifestation concept, The Secret, years ago, it was like all the rave. Do you really attract, as a general question, people and things into your life based on perhaps what you're putting out there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I
Mhm.
mean, a perfect example of that, Sandy, would be, um, I think this happens oftentimes for um, folks who are sort of lacking in their deeper sense of confidence about themselves, for example, right?
Mhm.
So, maybe my self esteem isn't really strong. Maybe I'm
Mhm.
not a really confident person. Um, that's going to show up, you know, uh, in an observational way or energetic way, if you want to put it that way, in the
Mhm.
way you communicate to others, in
Mhm.
your boundary setting or lack thereof, in how you communicate to a partner, your own sense of worth, right? So all of that is going to absolutely impact the kinds of people that you allow in or the kinds of people that you keep yourself away from.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
Yes, absolutely true. And somebody says, yes, you've got to work on yourself,
Yeah.
first and foremost. And I think a lot of us can relate to this, at some level, because we've been there where we've had a situation or a period in our lives when we weren't our best versions of ourselves. And so all of a sudden, that's when you had all of the crazy relationships. You were attracting really toxic people, into your life as well.
Yeah.
So, and
Sandy, let me just give an example here because I think that
Mhm.
always sort of resonates with people, and I'll use myself. So,
Mhm.
um, this is no sort of responsibility on any particular sort of series of people, but I happen to have grown up in a home where my parents didn't get along very well. They didn't
Mhm.
have a very happy and fruitful marriage. That probably has to do with a lot of different reasons, sort of the generation that they grew up in, how they found themselves, their own
Mhm.
traumas that they had that they tried, couldn't sort of look at. the fact that both of my parents were under a lot of stress, being immigrants in a new. I mean, several different factors, right? It's less about what factors contributed to it and more that it did contribute. So I grew up in a home watching my parents fight a lot, scream at each other, disrespect each other. That, because it's all I saw growing up, seemed very normal to me. Okay. So, of course, in my relationships in my early 20s and almost into my 30s, that we argue every day or a couple of times a week just seemed normal. Like that's just the thing that we do. Right. And it should be okay. I didn't understand at that time that there were much more effective and deeper ways of communicating. I hadn't noticed at that time that there was a lot of anger or resentment that I was showing up with in my relationships. Another thing that I will share here is because I was a very highly empathic and compassionate child, growing up in a home where adults were emotionally disrupted or not getting the emotional attunement that they needed, I almost started to try and be that vehicle for them, right? So when my mom was sad, I didn't want her to be sad, so I tried to do whatever I can to cheer her up. Right? When my dad was angry, I tried to accommodate myself to not create more anger in the home, whether it was my fault or not, right? So you started to see how very early on in my development, I was developing this model or this framework without knowing that I needed to constantly change myself in order for other people to feel okay. So you can start to imagine what my early relationships were like romantically, right? I was trying to get in relationships with women that, the more sort of problems in their lives, the more attracted I was to them because I thought that I was going to come in and be the white knight and rescue them. I didn't have good boundaries because I was always focused on like what other people needed, not myself. Right. And so all of these different things that we sort of experience early on in our development end up showing up in our relationships later on, both for the good and for the bad.
So interesting. Yes. How do we as individuals try to live a more authentic life instead of pleasing the people that we want to attract? Because I think we have all done this, right? So we see someone and for whatever reason, we're attracted to them. Sometimes it's just pure looks, nothing else. Because once you get to know their personality, they're like, this is not what I thought here. But, you sort of change a little bit, tweak your personality. Some of us even our behavior, how we speak, our mannerisms. And I know that there is I've done some professional training around this, but like mirroring and how that works. I know that human beings tend to naturally mirror each other in environments and situations anyway. So maybe that's something that's kind of built into our DNA so that we can avoid conflict and maybe get things done. But when it comes to personal relationships, if you mirror too much, you kind of become something that you're really not, right? So how do you be more authentic in a relationship as opposed to trying to show people maybe what they want to see?
Yeah, great question, Sandy. I think it's a daily challenge, right? And what I mean by that is, every relationship has just multiple layers. So obviously there's an aspect of us that, wants to really care about our partner and try to accommodate where we can and be flexible. There are times where we have to make compromises in relationships, right? But there are also times where we need to make sure that we're not losing ourselves in the process. Right? And so one of the things I talk about is like, when we first meet someone, like, of course, we're going to put our best foot forward. Right? Of course, we want to show the best aspect of ourselves. Of course, we're going to accommodate and sort of shift because maybe there are parts of us that we're willing to let go of, that we know we need to heal or that we need to improve. And that's all absolutely okay. I think what we tend to forget about in relationships is that things are going to get hard. Right? Eventually, either for one of the partners or both. And that can be because things are hard professionally, because, there are just some challenges in life. Um, and so, what often we do early on in relationships is that we are afraid to have the more serious conversations about, like, what is this relationship and what are we going to look like when things are hard,
Mm,
right? When we're both working, 40 plus hours a week, when maybe we have a child for the first time, and or when we're financially taxed, right? Like, we
mm,
we avoid having those conversations early on because they feel sticky, they feel hard, they feel vulnerable. And then what happens is, right, that stressor, if you will, eventually shows up in the relationship, and we don't know what to do. Right? We start to shut down. We start to, any of us when we're stressed go to our like least healthy traits and characteristics. Right?
mm,
We become selfish. We become angry. We become resentful, and a lot of times we may not know how to communicate what's actually going on for us. Right?
mhm,
Like, for a lot of men in society, it's much easier to communicate anger
mhm,
or dissatisfaction or even resentment, maybe, than it is to communicate hurt or pain,
mhm,
or like, you've judged me, and it feels emotionally challenging.
mhm,
So most often what I tell, especially men, is like, if there's anger there, probably somewhere beneath that anger is a sense that you feel hurt by something. We just
mhm,
often don't know how to communicate that. So to answer your question, I think again it comes back to this idea of like healing the self. I went through a string of really not healthy relationships for many years before I said, wait a second, Dr. Carlos, there's a pattern here, and you're a common denominator,
mhm,
right? Like, you need to see your patterns here. You need to see the kind of people you're attracting and why. Where is that coming from on an unconscious, from an unconscious place? And so that was a time where I went back to therapy, and I was like, hey, I really need to figure out these relationship patterns I'm in. What is it that I'm doing? Why is it that I'm doing it? So that I can better understand myself and bring that better version of myself to the next relationship. And what I can tell you is that that's been amazingly helpful in my life. I now have a relationship with someone where, like, we really communicate through everything. And yeah, sometimes it feels hard, sometimes it feels hard, sometimes it feels sticky, but we're able to communicate from a vulnerable, raw place, from an honest place, and it makes a big difference in a relationship.
mhm. But it's scary to be vulnerable
So scary.
because I mean,
Yeah.
when you let people in at that level, they have the potential to hurt you. Like if you keep them at arm's length, so to speak, they're less likely to, know your secrets, really be in your heart. As they say, the closer people are to you, the more it hurts when something goes awry. So I think a lot of us have mastered the art of keeping people at arm's length and not really having these sort of deeper relationships, even with our friends and family members. We have a saying in the Caribbean. I don't know if you have something similar in the sort of Cuban Hispanic context, but we have a saying that says, farther distance, better friends. So that translates into like, stay away. We're going to keep people behind different layers. And we'll be better friends because you don't really know me. You don't know the authentic real me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a very common pattern for a lot of us. The subtle and not so subtle ways that we keep distance for ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things that I often share here, Sandy, is the ways that I'm sort of choosing to want to start to live my life, right? And oftentimes, by keeping people at bay, by putting up walls, by holding others, sort of at a distance. Yeah, it most absolutely feels safer,
Mhm.
but we're also distancing ourselves. Those walls that we're creating to push others away are also boxing us in,
Mm.
right? They're causing us to put up walls to the very connection that most of us as human beings are trying to find, right?
Mhm.
That raw, sort of honest, real, deep connection. And so, while in some ways that might be keeping you safe, what are you cutting yourself off from?
Mm.
The other thing I say here is that um, there's often a great deal of energy, effort, and um, just time that it requires to keep those walls up, to keep those boundaries always right. Like, oh, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. I don't know that I want to do that work anymore. Right. I want to keep showing up as myself. If you're someone that's going to stab me in the back, if you're someone that's going to hurt me, if you're someone that's going to misuse my trust, that's a you problem.
Mm.
That's something for you to carry around in your conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I noticed that over the years, I'm just wanting to open myself up to people. And if they're going to hurt me, like, I don't need to be hurt by that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If I'm too caught up in like protecting myself from every little thing, then I'm not living my life. And the other thing that I'm learning there is that I don't have to be afraid of rejection. I don't have to be afraid of someone leaving. I don't have to be afraid of my sadness. I don't have to be afraid of my grief.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm less afraid of those things, I feel less vulnerable in the world. Because you can't hurt me. Your words can't hurt me. Your actions can't hurt me because I'm too resilient. I will keep getting back up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to live with the pain and suffering of some misdeed or misaction that you have tried to bestow on me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to rise above that. And I want to keep living in love. Because the problem then, Sandy, is if I'm reactionary to all of the pain, the stuff that people are giving me in their lives, then it blocks me from showing up here today and being in absolute love and authenticity for you, for the audience, right? I'm cutting myself off from those places, and that's not fair to the other people in my life who haven't hurt me.
Mm-hmm. Right. Wow. Some good questions here and some absolutely amazing responses. So Marshall says that there's no way you can be with a person and be going through crazy issues and not check yourself first. And, sort of maybe relationship communication rule 101, which we often have to remember because we all do it, unfortunately, is seek first to understand, then be understood. So that's a basic premise of when you're sitting down having a conversation with someone, most of us are in our head already thinking about how I'm going to respond to that person. Yeah. So you're not actively listening and feeling, because to me, the art of listening is the art of feeling and understanding, not just, the audible part of it. Yes, your ears work, you're not deaf. To really understand what it is the person has said to you, and then asking them questions to make sure that you actually do understand, right? Because most of us were just jumping with a response, and most of the time it's just going to be a defensive response, right? So they say, I'm hurt by this. Well, I didn't mean to hurt you, and I'm not. It's like, okay, listen to what the person's actually saying to you, and maybe try to understand, what do you mean that you're hurt? Like, hurt in what way? And just ask more probative questions. So good morning, Marcia. Marcia is joining us from Florida this morning. MPG says, this is where I'm at right now. Thanks for highlighting this taboo topic. Thank you so much, MPG. We have a question from a male listener. Sometimes the guys are a little bit shy to put their questions on social. That's okay. Send us questions on WhatsApp. So this person says, let's say a man or woman benefited from therapy and resolved important issues. Can I just stop there for a second? Do we ever really resolve important issues that stem, I guess, deep-rooted from childhood? Or do we really learn how to just cope and manage with them? Is there a true resolution that happens?
I think a little bit of both. That's been my experience, Sandy. If we do enough work on ourselves, whether that's through therapy or some other means, we can really get to a place where we resolve a lot of past pains, past traumas. And that being said, human beings are often products of a lot of conditioning, whether mentally or through the behaviors that we often sort of embody day to day. So while a lot of things can be resolved, we always need to be mindful for how those patterns will show up again, especially in big moments of stress. But I have seen people really heal versions of themselves that just kind of stop showing up. Again, sort of resentment and anger, certain characteristics, of how we show up in relationships. I've seen that happen.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the second part says beyond these issues that may contribute to relationship issues, is there any data to suggest that men and women communicate differently and how that leads to misunderstandings in relationships? Of course, we know all the big books, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which really focus on the fact that we do communicate differently as, the sexes. But I suspect it's probably a lot deeper than that. So tell us a little bit about, do men and women typically, I know there's always exceptions to the rule, typically communicate differently?
Yeah, yes and no, right? So there's like nothing in our DNA that says, this is how women communicate, this is how men communicate. But a bigger aspect of how that gets impacted is just like social norms, right? And societal sort of imprints. The perfect one, and the one that's probably easiest to see, is that most of us as men, I mean, you just said it as you were reading this question, we're less often going to communicate from our hearts, right? Because that feels vulnerable, because we were told not to as children, because that's weak. All of the sort of cultural and societal programming that goes into telling men how we should or shouldn't communicate, that plays a big role. Where often, it's understood that women are going to share, that they're going to cry, right? Like these storylines that a lot of us sort of grew up into. So that's one of the pieces there. The other thing that I often talk about, Sandy, is, when I work with couples, often what I will find is, so partner number one will come and describe to me how they viewed some problem that they went through that week, how they felt about it, what actually happened, and give me their whole story. And then partner number two will give me their version. And it's often very different, right? Some pieces are the same, but how they experienced it, like how they think that it went down, seems very different than the first partner. And what I find is that when I investigate a little bit further, there is a third thing that happened. The third thing that happened is actually how it went down, but here are two people that are experiencing it from their lens, their vantage point. Right? Now, what does that mean? The deeper implications here, Sandy, are that most of us as human beings, again, I talk about this idea that we are products of the experiences that we've had throughout life, the people that we grew up around, the belief systems that we were indoctrinated into, the opinions and attitudes that we chose to adopt. Right? And now we're here in this present moment. Some conflict has occurred, and both of these individuals from different backgrounds, different opinions, different attitudes, different lenses are just sort of imposing or projecting or perceiving the same scenario from two different places. And that's all that's ever really going on for all of us. We're just going to experience things differently because we're experiencing it from our lens. So the important part for me as a psychologist is to understand both partners' lenses. Right? Oh, when your husband came home tired and exhausted and went into the room and didn't say hi to you, you interpreted that from a place of, oh, he's angry at me and he doesn't love me. Often we might find that there was some childhood wound there where you often weren't seen, you didn't feel heard, you didn't feel loved. So in that moment when your husband does that, it drives a deep sense of disconnection to some childhood wound. Right? So then what did the partner do in that moment? Right? She may have chosen to shut down because somebody's angry at me. So now the husband comes to talk to the wife in this example, right? and she can't open up because she feels hurt. And so
Mm.
what does that do to him, right? Then he moves into like, oh, maybe I'm not a good enough husband. And we look at that childhood wound, and you grew up in a house where you were constantly told you weren't enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, again, it's critical and vital that we both understand we and our partners in any romantic relationship, or any relationship really, have stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if we create the space to let me first look at what my stuff is,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe if I can work through that, I can then show up to this conversation from a much, less triggered place, a less sensitive place, a less angry place, and be ready to listen to you, Sandy. How did you experience this? What did you feel when I got home? What was the story
Yeah.
But yeah, and the other thing I think that can happen here too is that when you do your own work on yourself and you've healed yourself, it's much
Mhm.
easier to see if you are actually trying to get in a relationship with someone that's toxic.
Mhm.
You're not there thinking like, oh, is this me? Could
Mhm.
this, is this some pattern? No, you've started to resolve your patterns, so it's more
Mhm.
easy to see when somebody's being unhealthy around you.
Interesting. We've got a caller in the line. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program with Dr. Carlos.
Good morning, Sandra. Good morning, Dr. Carlos.
Good
Morning.
morning. By the way, his
Um,
show is going to be called Mind Matters with Dr. Carlos, just in case you're wondering.
okay, okay. Dr. Carlos, I had a question for you. In listening about communication styles, um, what I found in my experience and in the experience of, a lot of female friends and male friends that I have, right, when dating,
Mhm.
I find that, and I don't want to come across as sexist, so please, nobody come for me. But what I find is that a lot of, when it comes to communication styles, I found that generally speaking, men tend to be solution seekers.
Mhm.
And sometimes there's a breakdown in, all right, give you an example. Like I find with some women, and I don't want to put this only to women because I'm sure there's some men who are like this too, and vice versa.
Mhm.
Um, but like some women is like, oh my God, and let me tell you about my day, and this is the problem I'm having, and I don't know what to do, and this and that. And I think just as a man, like you're naturally, all right, this and this is what you need to do. But then when you say that, the woman is like, you don't care, why? And then it just gets frustrating because then it's like, what do you mean I don't care? Because I'm trying to find a solution to your problem.
Mm.
Can you speak to that, sir?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. This is a big one.
Mhm.
It happens often, right?
Mhm.
And you're right. A part of it does have to do. Uh, Men do tend to be, for the most part, seekers of solutions, right? And we want to fix things, and that's, again, there's a cultural narrative there, that's part of who we are as men. We work things out, we fix things, we protect, right? Like those narratives are there, and so let me sort of back up here.
Mhm.
One of the things that's important to recognize here is often why we're communicating.
Mhm.
So let's take a little bit of a more extreme example. Um, Sandy, let's just say that there's someone out there in the audience who just had a loved one pass,
Mm.
and that person comes to me and says, I don't know what I'm going to do without this person.
Mhm.
How am I going to make ends meet now financially? Like all of these like problems that they're percolating with.
Mhm.
How do you imagine it would feel for that person for me to
Mhm.
be like, well, here's what you need to do. You
Mm.
just need to do this, that, and the other. Oh, and
Right.
that grief, like, don't worry, that's going to pass.
Mhm.
It always does for us. You'll be okay.
Right.
Do you think that person's going to feel heard and understood and seen?
No,
Right.
absolutely not.
And so a lot of the times, again, this is whether it's women or men, we're communicating to be heard, not to get a solution.
Mhm.
And so a lot of what I teach a lot of my young therapists is don't be so quick to jump in with an action, a solution, or an intervention. Because oftentimes what we're just looking for when we're going through something challenging and difficult is just for somebody to say like, oh, that sounds horrible. Or like, I get it. God, wow, that must be tough. Right. And so again, I mean, I think it comes across in this really, we make a lot of jokes about it, but men just want to fix, right? Because that's a lot of times what we know how to do. We're less likely to know how to just sit and do what's called holding space. Let me just be in this situation with you and allow you to be in a place of grief, allow you to be in a place of anger without me having to fix it. And I can tell you folks that like, this is a constant challenge for me in my own relationship, right? Because one, I'm a man. Two, I'm a psychologist, right? People come to me to help me with, help them with their problems. And three, there's just like an urge. There's a tendency, to want to jump in and relieve someone else's suffering. And maybe that's needed sometimes. But again, the sense I often get from people is that we're just communicating from a place of wanting to be heard. Because oftentimes when we feel heard and validated, we're able to mobilize ourselves to our own action planning and resolving the issue from our internal resources.
Right.
So, a little technique here that I often share with folks is if you are often the receiver of that person that's like, oh my God, this is happening and I don't know what to do with this, is to simply ask the question, are you looking for solutions or advice here, or do you really just need me to listen? That simple question could really break through and sort of put it on the other person like, oh, interesting. Yeah, I actually don't need you to fix any of this for me. I just want you to relate to what I'm going through, right? So that's an easy way to go through that one.
Okay. Caller?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, again, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Dr. Carlos, about sort of, how we're raised differently as men. You are raised, I think, to be solution oriented. Fix the little truck, learn how to use your hands, glue it together. And when it even comes to our love languages, I think that's why a lot of men show it in a different way as well. Whereas women, are sort of brought up to be nurturers and caregivers. And, so we pigeonhole people based on the sexes in these sort of boxes that we think all women are nurturers, and we know that that isn't true. All women communicate a particular way, and that isn't true. And all men are going to be the ones who want to try to compartmentalize and fix their problems, when in fact there's a lot of women who also do that as well. So we kind of need to break out of trying to understand people based on our preconceptions and misconceptions, preconceived ideas and misconceptions of how the sexes work. And maybe just take people as you find them, knowing that nobody is going to be a mold of one thing or another because they're male or female or somewhere in between, right?
Absolutely. So beautifully said, Sandy.
Yeah. So 936-2626, phone lines are open. Around 9 o'clock, we are going to shift the conversation away from that particular relationship to perhaps one of the most important, if not the most important relationship you will have, is if you have children or if you're around children. So we'll start talking about children. But if you have a question around communication, Dr. Carlos is here now, relationships, any sort of general questions. Again, he's answering these in a general sense. He's not necessarily giving you therapeutic advice. You probably need to sit down with a therapist if it's that deep. But he's got years of experience, and so his insights are extremely helpful. Jasara says 100%. Neela says she's just joining, but she's loving this. Good morning to Ms. Dean, says blessing Sandy and CMR family. Fear no evil, says good morning, Sandy and CMR crew. Blessings. Thank you so much. There are people who, and perhaps this is a question, who continue to attract the same thing over and over again. So they attract the same person. It feels like over and over again. Is there any truth to that sort of theory that maybe it goes back to something much deeper, like either our first love, or even sometimes, what do they call it? The Oedipus complex, where you kind of fall in love with your opposite sex parent and you always find somebody who reminds you in some way of that opposite sex parent?
Yeah.
There's truth to that, you think?
Absolutely. I think these are sort of generalizations, and there is a deeper truth to that, right? Because we are going to, in a little bit, sort of start to speak about, our relationship with our children and, child development, right? And so one of the things we understand about adult relationships is that they are often understood from the lens of the earliest relationships we ever had. Because we come into the world to learn, and we learned both consciously and unconsciously from what was modeled from our earliest sort of attachment caretakers, and that's often mom and dad, especially mothers being the primary vehicle there. So there is a lot of truth to that, Sandy. I think a good example here to illustrate what you're talking about is, this thing with like patterns. A good example here would be the person, and I see this often, and again, it's a generality, but I see this often. I'll often have somebody come to me and say, I have this pattern of getting into relationships with people that are unavailable. Or with people that are emotionally distant. Now, one of the examples of what often happens here that person may not know is that that's actually on an unconscious level what they're looking for. Because perhaps they didn't learn how to communicate vulnerably and openly. Perhaps it feels scary to them to allow somebody in to have the kind of relationship that would require the level of intimacy and vulnerability that you're comfortable with. So what do? You date people that are long distance. You date people that are married, that like essentially that the relationship can't go as deep or as far as you really need it to. And that pattern is your pattern, right? That's not that those people just keep showing up in your life. Like you're attracting that in some way. For that kind of person, it's because it feels safer. We can keep the relationship at a distance where it feels safe for me to not be hurt. And so oftentimes those are how some of those patterns show up. So again, I think that the thing we sort of keep reiterating here is if you're seeing an unhealthy or significant pattern in your relationship, first seek to understand yourself and where that's coming from, right? Because it might sort of illustrate to you like, oh yeah, these people are unhealthy. Yeah, well, why have you been choosing those people that are unhealthy, that maybe haven't worked themselves, that maybe, and no judgment here. I'm someone that before going to therapy and finding these deeper things out about myself, I wasn't sort of showing up as my best version in relationships. I have to acknowledge that too. I have to acknowledge that there were maybe times where I met women that were in a much healthier place than I was, and I couldn't see it because I hadn't understood what was going on for me. Like no judgment. We're all trying to figure this out. We're all trying to grow. We're all trying to be better. How do we just keep leaning into that work?
Well, Dr. Mark joins us as Dr. Carlos is the truth.
Dr. Mark.
Absolutely. So, so fascinating. 936-2626, folks. The phone lines are open. Just checking Instagram. The Instagram folks are listening quietly. They're paying attention. No questions from them. But if you have any, we've got one coming in on WhatsApp. So let's see what we have here. But yes, if you have any questions or comments, feel free. If you're shy, you can always send it on the WhatsApp, and I will certainly screen grab it and share it with Dr. Carlos. So let me just pull this one up on the screen for you as well. So this person shares the following. This says, I'm more or less giving up on finding any meaningful relationships. Oh, wow. My marriage ended after we separated in 2015 and officially divorced in 2019. Since then, I've been single. honestly, I'm not even sure if I'm ready for another relationship. I've gotten used to being alone, and in many ways, I'm comfortable that way. But sometimes I do crave a bit of company. Still, the moment I start entertaining the idea of being in a relationship again, I think about the potential drama and emotional toll, and I immediately shut down the whole conversation in my own head. Wow, a lot to unpack here. Let's back up. When a relationship ends, sometimes even friendships, it can feel like the death of something,
Yeah.
right? I have cried over a friendship ending because of the sense of like betrayal and the closeness I was with that person. Like I didn't really know, and this was just a platonic female friend, but I didn't even know how to process some of what transpired. So friendships of all levels, intimate relationships are even more complicated. When that relationship comes to an end, especially if it was a bad ending, that can be very, very traumatic.
Yeah. 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 I think there's a lot here in this comment, Sandy. But to speak to your point, like, it's absolutely natural to want to protect ourselves from pain,
Mm,
right? Like, let's just be honest about that. Whether it was somebody that betrayed our trust or just a relationship that, we went different ways or didn't work out or we grew apart, whatever it is, like these things show up in everybody's life. And it feels dreadful. Let's be honest about that. It feels
mhm,
painful. There's a grieving process that needs to transpire. There's sadness that arises. There's feelings of rejection. Like that's all real. I don't think the purpose here is to transcend all of that and be like some
mhm,
robot. No, but that is also part of what love is. It's
mhm,
opening yourself up to the possibility that it can be painful. And that
mhm,
in that pain too we grow, that in that pain too we experience the human condition,
mm,
right? And that oftentimes we can't do anything to avoid that. No matter how many walls like right, it, it, it,
mhm,
it's just hard because we're social creatures,
mhm.
right?
Right.
From an evolutionary perspective, it is important to us to be in
Mhm,
relationship with others, to feel loved, to feel connected to others. So also, no judgment about the people that might want to stay single. Great. Like that's a decision people
mhm.
absolutely make about their lives.
Right.
Um, what I'm capturing sort of a little bit here is right. I think about the potential drama and emotional toll when I think about
Mm,
potential other relationships. Well, what I'm hearing there is that somewhere along the way there was just a lot of pain and a lot of drama. So of course you would want to avoid that. But I would
mhm,
also challenge you here to think about, are there relationships out there that can be lacking in that?
mm.
If
Right.
that's the history of all the relationships we've had, traumatic, emotional, overbearing, then of course we're going to want to avoid any future relationship.
Mhm,
But we need to look at the narrative there. The
mm,
narrative there is a little bit off because it's not leaving room for the relationship that's trusting, that's beautiful, that's supportive, that doesn't have to come with drama and sort of toxicity, if you will,
mhm,
right? But I think the bigger thing here is that like I remember a relationship that I was in that sort of ended abruptly, at the initiation of the other person, and I didn't see it coming. I wasn't prepared for it. It's not like we were arguing all day. We were getting along great. At least I perceived in my mind. And then the person just sort of disappeared and didn't ever tell me why she wanted to leave. And it was heartbreaking. I spent a year depressed and just brokenhearted and trying to understand, like, what could I have done different? Um,
mhm,
and you better believe, Sandy, that dating after that felt really hard because I
mhm,
was afraid to want to open my heart to anybody else.
hmm,
And, I convinced myself too, like, oh, maybe it's just better to be alone. And you're right,
mhm,
it's safer. It's better. And if you've been living on your own, heck yeah, I could tell you that's so much easier to not have
mhm,
to rely on anybody else or sort of count on anybody else. Yeah, of course that's easier.
mhm,
Um, the place I arrived there is that like being in a meaningful relationship meant something to me, and it's something I wanted as part of my life. And so I think, like with anything else in life, we need to open ourselves up to the potential fear of the unknown,
Mm,
right? And walk in trust and in faith that, like, there are good people out there that
mhm.
want to protect us, that want to love us, that want to take care of us. Um, and again, living single is absolutely fine as well, right? Like, we all
Mhm,
get to kind of choose how we want to live our lives at the end of the day.
mhm. And do you think it's okay for someone to live single for the rest of their lives? I mean, is that a thing where, you're okay with being alone forever, like no romantic
Yeah.
partner?
Sort of to what you were saying earlier about shifting our narrative around sort of men and women, female and male, I think we open up our perspective here too. I don't think there's a wrong or a right way. I
Mhm,
think every human being, I believe that they get to sort of choose how they want to live the rest of their years. And I would say something that I would bring some curiosity to is, if my choosing to live alone is from a place of fear of loss, fear of hurt, fear of pain,
mm,
and there is another part of me that's truly longing for connection, and I
mhm,
am not listening to that part of me, that's something
mm,
to sit with and get curious about, right? Are you cutting yourself off from love from a place of fear?
yes.
Because
Mm,
the truth is that, like, whether it's in our professional lives or whether in our relationships, we have to deal with the factor of uncertainty,
mhm,
right? Like, to truly love from the most profound place, it needs to be devoid of fear. It
yes.
needs to be like in any given moment, I can lose everything around me. That
Mm,
doesn't mean that I don't put myself out there to try.
right. Yes. And it's so interesting that I say a lot of times, people, we talk about, oh my God, this person got divorced, as though a divorce is like the end of the world or such a bad thing. And I try to say, you know what? For me, I don't see divorces as failures necessarily. I see it as transitioning.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
relationship didn't work out. Not every relationship is going to work out despite your best efforts. You might just be in different places at different times. Like, I think of my first love, right? To this day, that person has like the most special place in my heart. But I realized that, unfortunately, because of our youth and just different things, it was destined to fail. There were cultural differences that we couldn't navigate at such a young age. And I always think, if I met him again now, it would probably work because the love was really, really there. He's a good person. And I think that sometimes there's a misalignment in where you are in your life, and you're not ready for that person. That person isn't ready for you. So the end of a relationship or even a divorce shouldn't be seen as a failure if you really tried. You're transitioning into something else. And perhaps you could even transition into being great co-parents if you have children, or being good friends after divorce. It doesn't always have to be acrimonious, or you can just move on. That person has moved on. Hopefully they're in a better place in their life. You're in a better place and everybody's good. But I'm sure if you were married for 4 years, for 5 years, for a decade or more, there were probably, well, hopefully more good times than bad. So whatever led you to the dissolution of the marriage, shouldn't your entire relationship shouldn't be judged on the fact that you divorced or you separated, right? Am I crazy for
Yeah,
thinking of
no,
it
I
in
think
that way?
you're spot on. You're spot on, Sandy. Um, One of the things that is always interesting to watch is, I think that love, just the word love, the action love, it in a lot of ways has become so romanticized for us. Through the books, the movies, the things that we see on social media, what love should look like, right? And so a lot of us entered love initially with these really firm sort of frameworks and expectations of how it's supposed to be, that
Mhm.
leave very little room for, right, like, the arguments about, how the dishes are going to get done, or the wet towel on the floor, or how we deal with in-laws, right? Like, and so what happens for a lot of us is that when we start to meet that friction within the relationship, we associate it to like, oh, you must not love me. Like, if you get angry at me, you must not love me, and that's inaccurate, right? Love can also hold a space along with differences of opinion and getting angry at times and getting frustrated and not agreeing on things. And so I think the ways that we come to perceive what love needs to look like often makes us feel somehow devalued in our experience of that, when really, like, it's a growing experience. It's a way to really learn more about ourselves and about our partners. And so we need to leave room for those aspects as well. I also think that one of the other things that we're seeing from again, just a more broader perspective is we're a lot less likely in today's day and age to stay and fight, to stay and work through the challenges of the relationship. Like, relationships have just become more disposable because we have access to more people, right? We have dating apps. We have, and so like, oh, why am I going to sit and work through this challenge? I can go out there and meet somebody this week and start a new relationship, right?
Yes.
And so we're less likely to really hang in there and fight where we need to, which I believe on a deeper level, that the most beautiful, loving, most connected and powerful relationships are those couples that have navigated challenges together and have found ways to overcome.
Wow. I get that. And as a person I'm the person who's more likely to leave, because I don't know, it's easier for me to detach than put in too much effort. Sometimes I feel like, right? There've not been a whole lot of people that I'm going to be like, I'm going to put the effort into this relationship. So, but I'm running from something, I think, I'm not necessarily running towards anything. I'm just running from having to really deal with it. But here's a really interesting question. And this one made me pause, because when I was reflecting again on my first relationship, he was from Sri Lanka, and we were in university. And I remember him saying to me, because, arranged marriages, we would talk about, at that age, you're so philosophical about life.
Right.
And one of the things that he said to me that over the years I've changed my opinion about, and I think he was probably right. And he said that you can learn to love someone. In the Western world, we have this concept of love being instantaneous, being combustible, being you find someone and boom, it's like, that's the person, and just all these, like, it's really, really emotive, right? You fall into love with this person. And learning to love someone is a very different concept that we don't get. And the way that he explained it to me was really in relation to arranged marriages, right?
Yeah.
So his parents were from opposite sides of like the Sri Lankan divide. Culturally, there was a civil war. One had a different religion than the other. Like, they were really polar opposites. And they had what we would call a romantic love as opposed to like an arranged situation. But even in an arranged situation, he said, if you have enough in common with that person and you're not fighting about money, because you're both from similar backgrounds, you're not fighting about religion, you're of similar age group, similar interests, is there a philosophy, because this is what I think really now, that this concept of opposites attract is probably not a good method to build a romantic relationship on in particular. And so the person says in this question, what happens when reality hits that two persons are just not compatible, or they have grown out of each other? So I suspect the incompatibility was always there. But once again, we adjust. When we really like someone, we will adjust for them. And incompatibility can be based on so many different factors, from age making us incompatible because we're just in totally different places, different generations in our lives, whatever, religious beliefs, or, upbringings and families, economics, the whole 9 yards. So what is it, do you believe, number one, that compatibility is important in romantic relationships? Number two, can you really truly grow to love someone And do you need to have, in order for that to happen successfully, do you need to come from some sort of a common and shared ground? Because it is easier when you're not fighting about religious beliefs, money, politics, whatever.
Yeah.
So lots of questions packed in there. But the first question really is, does compatibility matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think it absolutely matters in that, part of where we feel connected and loved is when we're sharing experiences with our partner, right? And if there's no compatibility, we don't like to travel together, read together, whatever it is, we may not feel that deeper connection there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think compatibility absolutely matters. I also think you can learn to love someone, right? It's all about the intentions that we set for how we want our relationship to look like, and how much willingness do we have to put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is that if you're really ready and willing to put in that hard work, I'm not saying that you stay with someone who's abusive, who's unhealthy, who's causing you harm. I would never advocate that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying that you hang in there and do the work, and you do the work together. Because what we're going to be most inclined to do, right? You said this earlier, Sandy, like, in my eyes, to truly love someone, you are letting them in. Like, you're handing over a dagger and bearing your open heart and saying, you have the capacity to crush me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still going to hand over this dagger because I trust, and I'm willing to put in the work to make myself vulnerable, to love from that place for our commitment, for the commitment of our journey together. Right? So I talk about this idea, and this is a shift I made in my own sort of life some years back. I think from a place of fear, or from a place of avoiding pain, we will often want our partner to be the ways that we want them to be. Act a certain way, to love a certain way, to talk to us a certain way, to fight a certain way, to not, harm us a certain way, right? Like, we have a lot of expectations, which is like, these are the things that are going to hurt me. Please don't do these things, or you don't love me. And while that's all good and well, what we might be doing there is responding from a place of our own dysfunction, of our own protection. And if all I'm ever doing is putting all of these expectations on you to not hurt me, but not doing the work on myself to not feel like I'm someone that can't deal with a little bit of pain, a little bit of rejection, a little bit of judgment, then I'm constantly walking on eggshells. I'm constantly walking in fear. So the alternative thing I want to do is to utilize the places where there is friction in my relationship to see where I can become less judgmental, to see where I can learn to surrender, to see where I can learn to let go, to see where I can learn to deepen my love. Where can I deepen my compassion? So the relationship becomes a mirror for where both parties can see their patterns and see what's arising and deepen that place within themselves. Alternatively, what most of us are doing is being like, whoa, this, there could be pain here. That and we're walking in fear. We're absolutely terrified of the relationship and what might happen.
Wow.
But all of that to say to this question here is like, there's also a truth that sometimes we grow apart. I'm constantly telling my partner, like, thank you for the patience you give me, because I'm not the same person I was last year or 4 or 5. And like, neither is she. Right. And so in relationships, can we open that space for us to grow together? Not that you have to be there, in the service of my growth alone.
Well, this person's happy to see you. OMG, Dr. Carlos.
That's great. Look at that.
All of the emojis in the world, party emoji, heart emoji, clapping emoji.
That's wonderful. Brilliant.
They go on to say, I just got home from work and tuning in, and already my mind and heart have opened its doors for the invaluable knowledge that he spreads like soft French butter for us. Come through, Dr. Carlos.
Beautiful.
Absolutely amazing. Just a quick announcement. If you're in the Bordentown area and you're missing a family member this morning, a 4-legged family member, please note that someone has found your dog in the vicinity of the Mostyn's Esso gas station in Bordentown. So it looks like a little Shih Tzu mix of some sort. It looks like an older dog as well. Telltale signs, the poor little eyes looked a little bit glazed over, wearing a red collar. If you've lost a dog, please reach out on WhatsApp and we can give you the contact details for the person who has your little furry friend. Another question coming through. What advice would he give on the impact societal pressures have on a relationship? Now, I wonder when they say societal pressures, if they could be more specific. Is that societal pressures to stay in a relationship? Is that societal pressures like, I mean, that could be so many things, right?
Yeah, societal pressures, cultural pressures, familial pressures, all of that is real. That does obviously create impacts in terms of our expectations, right? You know, the truth is that there's a traditional narrative around divorce that it's right. You've failed, or you should feel shameful of that again, especially in certain cultures. And so, obviously, all of that has an implication on how we navigate our relationships. And I think it's important for each individual to sort of sit with and, you know, sort of tease apart what that means for them in particular and how they want to navigate that. I think when we allow ourselves to be too caught up in allowing all of these different frameworks, norms, pressures to dictate how we show up in our relationship, then it just feels harder to, you know, like just navigating what you have in front of you sometimes is hard enough. Now there's all these other rules and implications that we feel like we need to follow. I think we need to trust. We need to trust the part within ourselves, our heart, if you will, our gut, about what is right for us. And I trust that for most people, at the end of the day, that voice comes through really clear and lets you know, is this the right relationship for you or not? And sometimes what we need to do, Sandy, is to, you know, let go of all of the models, let go of you know, so other people are going to think what they're going to think. Let that be the case, right? You know, I'm not saying that it just has to be about your happiness, but like, you know, I want to show up in the world as my healthiest version. And if the people around me are not helping me get there, or you know, like I need to think about that.
And women, I think the person clarified to stay in a relationship. I think women have more societal pressure and expectations to remain in a relationship, kind of no matter what. Like you're going to be seen as a greater failure. We've seen men kind of transition and move out of relationships, and we judge them, whatever. Oh, he's found a younger version or whatever. Oh, he cheated. But like, I don't know, it seems to come across differently if you're a woman, like the society, small communities, like, oh, you know, she's a big shot on the radio, for example. I think when you're a media personnel, you're in a position where you're sort of like in the limelight, people will judge you harshly. So I have a little funny story to tell. It wasn't this last Christmas, but the Christmas before, there was a woman who was messaging me, and she was saying to me, oh, you know, I ran into somebody at the store, and I don't really have any kind of real relationship with her. So it was a very odd conversation. But she's like, oh, you know, I was at the store, and this woman who I don't know said to me, oh, Sandy's husband is leaving her. And so I kind of chuckled, and I said, it isn't true, but if it was true, so what? I said, people get divorced every single day. Would that be like front page news? I mean, what's the big deal? And I kind of got the sense that none of this story was true because of the person tends to make things up a lot. But anyway, I basically said, listen, my husband's actually a very, very private person. So I'm pretty sure if he was leaving me, some random stranger that you claim that you don't know wouldn't know it before I would know it. You know what I mean? And I said, we have to get away from, again, thinking that divorces are some sort of indicative failure on the persons who are even getting a divorce. And I said, what would be the big deal? So what? People separate every single day. 50% of the population is going to get a divorce. So I would be in that 50% if that story was true, which it wasn't. And the ironic thing is I was actually on family vacation trying to spend some quality time, and balance the work-life balance. But I mean, you have to, and it's hard. I get it. And so part of me has to kind of don't care what people think that much, where I'd be like, oh my God, if I were getting a divorce, I can't get it because what are people going to think of me? If you come to that position in your life, then it is what it is, right? Someone wants you to speak about attachment avoidance and ways to overcome it. Is this the same thing as not being able to commit?
Yeah, so sort of, and this is a really great topic. So for those really interested in taking this topic to just a deeper level, you might do a little bit of research on attachment styles, right? And so attachment styles, this is research that came out many years ago that helped us understand from a psychological and an emotional component what those early experiences are that have implications for how we are in relationships later on in life, right? And so there's several different attachment styles. There's a secure attachment style. There's an avoidant attachment style, which may be what this person's talking about here, an anxious attachment style, and a disorganized attachment style. Okay. And so all of these, again, they have implications. So let me see if I can help sort of bring a little bit of clarity to some of this by using an example. So let's say we have a baby. Let's say it's a 1-year-old baby, and they're taking a nap, Sandy, and they wake up from their nap and they're hungry. And so how do babies typically communicate that they have some need? They're crying, right? That's how babies communicate. They need to be changed. They want to be fed. They're tired, whatever that might be. So let's say that this baby's been napping in the room, in their crib, and they wake up and they start to cry, right? And now let's say mom is in the kitchen doing the dishes, hears the baby crying, and as soon as she hears the baby crying, she runs into the room, feeds the baby, changes the baby, and soothes the baby. Right? So now here's, a couple of hours later, the baby wakes up from a nap, is hungry, starts to cry. Mom rushes in, soothes the baby. What this baby's brain and nervous system is learning is that when it has a need, the mom, right, like the universe, like the world will come and soothe my needs. It will develop a sense of safety and security about its needs getting met. This is called a secure attachment style, right? When we develop this in our children early on, they're better able to regulate their emotions. They're better able to communicate their needs without shame. They're better able to set boundaries later on in life. They're better able to ask for what they need. This is a secure attachment style, right? Now, Sandy, you can imagine with all of the different stressors and things that parents deal with, that optimal environment it's a rarity, right? Because parents deal with their own stress. Parents will get frustrated, right? So that's a secure attachment style. Now, let's take the same baby, same situation. And the first time the baby cries, mom rushes in, soothes the baby. Next time the baby cries, mom's like, oh, I just have a few more plates to finish up. I'll go in there in a couple minutes. Now the baby's like, oh, I got to cry a little bit louder and harder for my needs to get met, right? And then the next time mom rushes in, but then the next time she doesn't hear the baby for 10 minutes. Now the baby's developing some confusion about like, oh, I'm not sure. Like sometimes my needs get met, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's this way and sometimes it's not. What that might develop for us later is an anxious attachment style. The child is tasked with trying to figure out when its needs will get met and when they won't. And they develop an internal anxiety. So now they're hyper vigilant of their environment, right? Like, is mom in an okay state to meet my needs right now, or dad, or whatever it might be, right? So that shifts, right? Now you're having to be hyper aware and hyper alert to see if your needs are going to get met. That's an anxious attachment style. Avoidance and disorganized has more to do, let's say, again, here the mother comes in one time, soothes the child. The next time she comes in and she ridicules the child, or screams at the child, or like, God, you cry so much. What am I going to do with you? Now there's a new sort of level of either shame or guilt or disconnection that's happening with the child. So now love doesn't feel safe or secure anymore. And what happens with attachment styles is that in order to protect ourselves emotionally and even our nervous system, we start to figure out strategies along the way to protect ourselves. To protect ourselves from pain, from disconnection, from ridicule, from judgment, from guilt. So maybe we start having less needs. Maybe we don't cry as often anymore. Maybe we try to internalize what we're going through. Maybe we don't open up to people. Maybe we don't see or perceive that the people in the world are safe. Maybe we start to keep people at an arm's distance. Right? So for me as a clinical psychologist, whenever we're talking about relationships, this is what I want to come and understand. What was modeled? What were the experiences early on? Did you especially around the mother, because the mother's a central attachment figure. Did she meet your needs? How did she meet your needs? Was it like, oh my God, you're crying again. Oh, you need to be fed again. Like what was it met with love? Was it conditional? Was it met with pain? Was she not emotionally available? Like all of those are going to have implications to how we receive and perceive love later on in life.
Wow. As I was listening to you, I couldn't help but think of a video that I saw once. And they were trying to, I think, demonstrate this exact point that you've just been discussing, where they had a father playing with a baby. And then the baby was happy, he was playing, and then all of a sudden the dad just went blank and wasn't smiling, wasn't playing with the baby anymore. And this was a very young child, nonverbal, wasn't speaking yet or anything, but you could see from the body language of the baby immediately becoming uncomfortable, started to fuss and to cry and to need that parent, and almost seemed confused, like, why are you ignoring me? Why aren't you talking to me? And then the father turned back around to the baby and said, oh, I'm here. I'm okay. Everything's okay. And the baby immediately responded like, oh my God, let me hug you. Thank you. And this is like maybe a 7-8-month-old baby. So from before we even vocalize words in life, we know whether someone is being kind to us, whether someone loves us. This is like our person, a parent, if they're giving us emotional support and they're meeting not just our physical needs of, feeding us, changing our diaper, whatever, but playing with us, making eye contact. I think the point of this one was he was removing the whole eye contact from the baby, and the baby all of a sudden became a totally different child because there wasn't direct interaction and direct eye contact. I'll see if I can find that video because wow,
that's a great video. I've seen one. It was with the mother. It's a psychology experiment that was conducted to show how at such an early age, the child has requirements and, again, to connect and bond with the caretaker. And so what happens, Sandy, is the parent, the father in your example, the mother in mine, is asked by the researcher to just have a neutral face, sort of a stoic face. Don't smile, don't be angry. So just with the neutral face, at first you see the child try to engage. It'll try to laugh to get the parent to also laugh, to engage, to bond. And eventually when it perceives that the parent isn't bonding, it'll get dysregulated. It'll start to get sad and cry so that it can receive that bonding again. That happens that early in our lives.
Wow. Fascinating. Some
Another
more
video that if people
Yes.
find out there, I saw it recently, was again, it was a baby less than a year old. And it was, kind of fussy and crying. And then it shows the mother just resting her chin on the baby's leg. Like not even holding, like just resting, like just touching, comfort. And the baby starts to regulate itself. It stops crying, and then it lets out this big sigh because it feels regulated. Their nervous system is regulated. That's wired into us from the day that we come into the world, right? Because we come into the world helpless, right? Needing the connection to survive from those early caretakers.
So fascinating. Oh my gosh. So when we talk about, we're going to transition here in just a bit about children, you got to have healthy parents to have healthy kids, right? And if you're in relationships and you're not healthy, it's, it can be so disruptive to setting this pattern that will make sure that your children do not become necessarily healthy adults either. So you got to work on yourself. So this question is, why do romantic relationships end when either person experiences death of a loved one? So death of a loved one can be so traumatic. It can have an impact on everything. And I guess romantic relationships sometimes bear the pressure of that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I don't know that I've seen the research on this to really sort of speak to it in any particular way. Other than to just speak from a general perspective. I mean, the loss of a loved one has a great impact. A lot of times it may shift, how we view ourselves in the world or how we've been viewing others in the world. And so, there could be something there. I think something like grief and loss is something that traditionally we don't have the greatest amount of comfort with from a sort of societal perspective. I think most of us, if given the chance, are likely to avoid difficult conversations, especially conversations around emotional situations that feel really, really painful. And so oftentimes when there's a big shift in life, like the loss of a loved one or any of that, it can put a lot of pressure on the relationship that maybe the relationship hasn't had to contend with up until that point. And again here, right, it's like what's the willingness that we have to stay in there and fight, or we can at times sort of choose to walk away because we don't see that it can work out. So yeah, that's an interesting one. But
Do you recommend, say in somebody's head, they're thinking, okay, we've moved apart. Divorce is probably inevitable at this stage. Should every couple go and see a therapist before they make that ultimate decision, you think?
Absolutely. I think one, whether you're in a relationship or getting ready to be in a relationship, go talk to someone and understand your patterns just so that you can better grasp how to be in the relationship, how to be the healthiest version of you in that relationship. Where, right, where do you tend to get frustrated? What triggers do you have? Why are those triggers there, right? So that's vitally important. But yeah, like premarital counseling or, I think is a really, really powerful tool. Like, hey, before we get to those hard moments in this relationship, let's have a conversation about how we want to handle those moments, how we want to handle each other when those difficult and challenging situations arise, because they will, right? Like no relationship is devoid of that.
Yeah. And having a discussion beforehand is beneficial because then you're not caught up in the emotion of it quite as much, because you've talked about it before. Like if we come in a situation where one partner has cheated, how are we going to deal with that?
Right.
And you kind of know the boundaries as well, I think, of what your partner is willing to put up with. So some amazing and excellent questions this morning. Thank you so much, Miss Dorothy, joining us and listening from Florida. We do have our usual listeners from all over the world. Miss Lucille from the UK. She's quietly listening. I want to just share this one clip because I've got some video clips and stuff here to kind of make this segment more fun and interactive. But this is an older version an
This
older video
experiment, which I
of what
watched
we're
through a
talking
two-way
about.
mirror,
There's a
is
few.
designed to gauge how secure is the crucial relationship between mother and child.
Okay, this bunny is going to go here, and that bunny will be on top.
The value of the test has been established in studies that would watch a child, 1-year-old, and then follow it up and interview them about the relationships to their parents when they were 21 years old. So we're quite confident in the long-term significance of this relationship.
Peter, that's Peter.
After several minutes' play, the mother is signaled to leave the room.
Sweetie, I'll be back in 1 minute, okay? I'll get you back in 1 minute.
I'm sitting for you. Shame, I feel. But she'll survive. The key moment in the experiment is the child's reaction to her mother's return.
Hi. Hi. It's okay.
The important clue is whether the baby's able to become calmed down by the contact with the mother, get back to play. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes. But you see, when the mother was out, she was only interested in the mother, no interest in the toys. Now she has a contact with the mother, she's beginning to show a little interest in the environment, and shortly she'll be right back with the toys where we started.
So you would call this a secure one?
Yes, yes.
She's certainly much happier.
Goes to the door following her. Now, we sent the mother right back in, but the point here is not to distress the baby. We're just trying to challenge it. The baby puts her hands to her face in a sad expression, puts her face down. When she picks her up, she keeps her head down, her arms out, and then she sits in the chair holding the baby. The baby's still sullen. He's low-keyed.
So you would call this insecure
Yes,
attachment?
insecure. He's avoidant. He's not engaging her, and it's not the reunion's not effective. And it's important to remember here that the thing that upset him was her absence. Her return should be the solution to his problem. Now this is another pattern that we see in babies who are not good at using their mother as a secure base at home. This baby is also insecure. But you'll see, we got a look at his play before the separation. The mother's left, and when she returns, she picks him up. He can't calm down. He's still upset. She offers a toy to amuse him or to comfort him or to distract him, and he slaps it away. She offers another. He slaps it away. He's angry. We call these babies resistant or ambivalent because they both want her back and yet can't use the contact. We think that the difficulty is that in the past, when he sought comfort, she's been inconsistent as to whether she's available and responsive or not.
Wow. So that inconsistency, even at such a young age, babies can pick up on, and it starts to impact their personalities, basically.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. Powerful.
Wow. Jim has a question, and we're going to get into some of the parenting stuff now. But Jim says, and by the way, for the benefit of our radio listeners listening on Bobo 103.1, we'll continue for a little bit longer in social media. So by all means, join the conversation there. We've got cmrtv.com live on the website, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So Jim says, what offerings does a doctor have for a couple who one is a communicator, prefers to talk things out, and the other remains silent for the most part, or goes the other direction and becomes defensive, almost like being personally attacked?
Yeah. So what I'll share here is something that comes from a model that's emotionally focused therapy that's used to for couples therapy. And I'll preface even that information by saying, Sandy, after that really powerful video that we watched, that often what it feels like to me when I'm working with a couple is just that I'm working with two adult children and their relationship wounds showing up and sort of being imposed on one another, right? Like at the core, these are two really loving, good people that want to show up in their relationship, but they're bogged down by their both conscious and unconscious patterns of attachment, right? So this little pattern here is often very similar to what EFT talks about, the pursuer and the withdrawer. And usually relationships have one of each. So the pursuer is often the person that wants to communicate, that feels sort of more comfortable communicating for any series of reasons. Not always, but will sometimes be the female in the relationship, again because of these cultural sort of narratives. But more so than that, it's usually the person that is really needing to communicate, because if they don't, they feel a great sense of uncertainty and anxiety around the love connection, right? So if my partner's upset at me, if my partner's not communicating with me, if my partner's shut down, I get more anxious because I feel that that is a threat to the love, the bonding relationship, right? So maybe you're trying to communicate from a very healthy place, but often we're trying to communicate from a place of like, come, we need to talk, we need to fix this. And then there's the withdrawer. The withdrawer at times may not be super comfortable, maybe acknowledging their own emotions, recognizing their own emotions, or being able to communicate their emotions. So an interaction or a talk or a communication where we have to get vulnerable feels really uncomfortable for me. So I withdraw, I back out. I don't want to talk. I'm going to go silent. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to drive off. What that then does to the pursuer is it increases their anxiety. Now they're more distressed, which is going to compel them to want to pull further closer together and make the withdrawer want to pull further apart. And then we just get caught in this like infinite loop, unless there's some sort of interruption about the loop, about a curiosity, an insight about what's happening. Why am I shutting down? Right, a space that feels safe where we come to communicate all of this, but don't feel pressured in that communication. So I don't know if that's sort of what's playing out here specifically, but again, my sense is that if we look at it deep enough, one and or both of the partners in that relationship is responding from a place of feeling threatened, from a place of feeling judged, from a place of avoiding pain. And that's often because we carry some model or some idea, right, that love means pain, or, again, whatever we saw in our early environments growing up with our attachment figures.
And then going back to the earlier question about communication styles, this is really where it stems from. Yeah, interesting. All right, Aisle 2025 says there's more to life than being in a romantic relationship. You have love and friendships, family, work, pets, charity work, etc. Strong-willed, Inspiring says, is it psychologically healthy to feel complete and content without seeking a romantic or marital relationship, especially when one experiences deep fulfillment through spirituality and self-awareness? So you want to become a monk, and there are people who do it,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's important here to reiterate our point from earlier. There's no judgment here. There is every single different flavor of experience in relationships out there. And if we do feel a great sense of fulfillment, I think that's where we ultimately want to be in our relationships anyway. I don't want to need my partner for anything.
Right.
I want my partner to be a complement to what I'm already fulfilling within myself. Because when I'm self-fulfilled, when I have love for myself, when I'm able to heal myself, when I'm able to regulate myself, and I'm not putting that burden on my partner, then my partner can show up not only for herself, but to be the person that she needs to be. So I think it's absolutely psychologically healthy to either be alone or to be in a relationship and feel that contentment and completeness and not need it from any source outside of you. Not only your partner, but your work or anything else for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Dr. Victor Lucloy says, what advice would you give to someone whose partner has narcissistic personality disorder? Boy, now let me tell you, this is where, oh, we've got a caller who I forgot about. Oh my goodness. This is where I know I'm not a professional cut out for this type of work, because I'd be like, run to the hills, run away.
Yeah, this is a big one, and we could have a whole sort of episode around this, I think. And I want to be really sort of mindful here of a couple of different things. One, especially on social media, we see a lot of these terms thrown around that may not be accurately speaking to the person or the situation, right? Just because somebody tends to be a little bit egotistical at times, or somebody can be a little bit selfish, may not necessarily mean that they're narcissistic, right? So there are traits that we can often sort of show, or that people may have, that can speak to an interpersonal patterning of who they are, and not necessarily speak to this actual clinical disorder, if you will. A lot of the personality disorders, that's what they're called: narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and some of the other big ones. Yeah, we want to be mindful of how we are labeling some of those traits, right? A lot of those personality disorders are often, what the research shows, they're often rooted in a deep, early, very traumatic interpersonal wound, where the person had to learn to protect themselves in such a significant way that what it looks like later on in life is these really sort of ingrained interpersonal patterns of dysregulation, of protecting the self, of having for instance, with people who have narcissistic traits, I need to make myself feel better than everyone all of the time, because my core wound is that I feel so valueless and so not worthy, that the way I find worthy is through my validation, through making myself put down people and then feeling better in that context. Again, this is a broad sort of window. With questions like that, I just get really curious about, like, who is that person specifically? What had they been through in life? And let's try to understand it from that perspective, than just slapping a label on it. And sort of knowing that some people are dealing with these deeper wounds, and that the ways that they show up in the world are often, there's not a real sort of intention to show up narcissistic or some of these other ways, but that it's coming from a deeper wound that probably needs to be healed.
Okay, but you have a caller. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm so glad that I came on. When I did, I was busy, and I said, oh, I got to go on CMR, see what's going on. This topic is really one that touches my heart. I always have a soft spot, and always said I wanted to outreach and hurt people, and to help people. And that's why a lot of times I'm drawn to people that are hurt. I've had an incident with this young lady, beautiful young lady, and she was working at the bank that I bank with. And she said to me, I noticed she started to get very distressed, and she never used to be. And I said, what's wrong with you? She said, my daughter's getting to the age to be 16. And when she gets 16, she's going to get pregnant. I'm like, why would you say something like that? She has a boyfriend? Not yet, but she'll have one. And I said, well, why would lead you to something like that? She said her grandmother, her great grandmother, her mother, and she all got pregnant at 16. I said, well, that's why you should decide that that will not happen to your daughter. You need to speak to her, pray about it. And I promise you that if you, because some things are generational curse because we make it a curse because we start to think it's going to happen because it happened to my mom, it happened to my this one, that one in the family. So I think a lot of us, it's what we create sometimes also in our minds. You know, we fear what we fear, and what we fear a lot of time come to happen to us because we fear it, and not always necessarily. I believe, like what the doctors say with narcissistic persons, I think that they didn't start out to be that way, but they protected yourself from something that they saw, just like how this young lady, and it becomes, because somebody else might have heard her saying, oh my God, this and that. They might say, oh, she's so sick, man. Oh, she's so, what, disgusting, you know, about this 16. Instead of saying that don't have to be you, you know, because we as human beings intense because it's not happening in our household or it hasn't happened where we see it. Sometimes we just let it off the loose because it's somebody else's problem. But when it becomes your problem, because you got children that's coming into this world, your grandchildren, you got children yourself, when it starts happening to them, then we start to see, okay, like autistic kids, I have a soft spot for those kids. And yes, they're challenging. But the problem is this, we, most of the time that have healthy kids don't have the time for that, you know, and the kids feel so, sometimes they don't get any better because they feel stupid, I believe, because we say, oh, you know, we hear them and their parents is there, whatever, you know. Yes, we want a quiet time. We're going on the plane, but we got to understand this child was born abnormal there, you know, and we got to reach out to the mom. Can I help you carry your bag? You know, sometimes it looks on me like, oh, she's crazy. Can I help you carry the kids? You know, and I do if they allow me, right? And the kids sometimes even calm down and look on you because I guess they're not used to somebody else that they're not familiar with reaching out for kindness or so forth. And I think we as human beings sometimes cause a lot of stress on other human beings that cause them to react in the way they does. I have a young man that visit me.
My apologies. When the good doctor said 10:30 in my head, it was 10:30 our time. It's actually 10:30 his time.
His
so
time.
Yes, I do want you to wrap it up for me just a little bit there.
Yes. But I'm just saying that I know a hardcore criminal that swear the world was against him.
Yeah.
Today, that young man is working and he give me thanks because I thought we just need to have more compassion, God knows, one to another, especially with the younger people, you know? And I really love this topic. This is some heart-touching thing for me. This is me because I try not to be judgmental. I have a cousin that tell me that's why she loves me so much.
Thank you.
So
Let's
let
leave
us
it
just
there.
be kind one to another and let love be a religion.
Absolutely. Thank you
Love
very
that.
much. Appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. We didn't get to talk about the kids, but we'll do that the next conversation.
Absolutely.
You know, this is how it works. Marjorie has a question, says, can these deeper wounds from the past be healed? Speaking about narcissists. So is there hope for someone who truly has, if they've been diagnosed properly with this narcissistic personality disorder, is there any hope for them if they're an adult already?
There is. I have witnessed it in my work myself. I've worked with clients with personality disorders. And, you know, with enough time, enough trust, enough patience, and enough love, I've seen major breakthroughs and major turnarounds where the personality disorder just doesn't show up anymore, right? The person learns a new model, learns that they can trust, learns that they are worth it, learns that they can shift their relationships. And so it's absolutely possible. There, you know, does need to be a willingness in that person's mind to sort of look at themselves and to want to work on themselves. You know, sometimes that's hard to get to, but it's absolutely possible.
All right. And that's why Dr. Carlos is here, because it is possible. Change is possible. turning the narrative around as possible when it comes to our own lives, when it comes to helping our children, our communities. This show is really meant to be about all of these things. Mental health matters, it really does matter. And so we're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Carlos. Eventually it will be once a week when he gets into his regular slot. During the summer, we're going to kind of play with our schedules a little bit. People are vacationing. I'm taking a week off and trying to really just focus on family and not do too much work during that week. And, we're going to get into regular schedule, and Dr. Carlos is going to be here for us. Jerry says, I'm super excited for the Dr. Carlos show. I think we're all excited for this show. It's going to be amazing. So we're going to transition him in, just again to quickly explain before we let him go. We are going to transition him into the show where initially he'll be part of this program, and then we're going to break him out and he'll be in the evenings, just mental health matters all alone, as a standalone show. So that's how we'll do it. I'll still be in the studio, so I'll still be able to get your calls and questions, just like how we're doing it right now. It just won't be part of the Cold Hard Truth episode. Dr. Carlos, my apologies on the time. You've always got to remind me because half the year we're in Cayman time and then half the year it flips. So, but thank you so much for coming on today. We really, really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Great to be here.
Have a good one. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll see Dr. Carlos again soon. And speaking of narcissistic personality disorder, there is a guy who he's a therapist, and he does kind of like funny video shorts about it, but still educational, funny but educational ones. And so I wanted to share one of the clips with him so that you guys can see this and tell me what you think about this. It is so interesting.
Please explain the difference between a narcissist and someone who is just avoidantly attached. Well, I think the difference comes down to intent. The narcissistic person uses avoidance as a form of punishment. The avoidantly attached person isn't trying to punish you with their distance. That's just how they feel safe. But neither is okay, right? Right. We all have to personally decide what we're going to tolerate in our romantic relationships. They are both maladaptive coping mechanisms, but the narcissist wants power and control. The avoidant doesn't. Okay. The narcissist wants to be the center of attention. They want praise and admiration. They need you to feed their ego. The avoidant doesn't want those things. The narcissist doesn't avoid conflict. They instigate it. They're controlling and jealous, and they want to isolate you and devalue you, so you look to them as a savior. The avoidant doesn't do that. That's true. Now, both can be very sensitive to shame and criticism. Both can play the victim and avoid accountability. Both can get defensive and dismissive and invalidate your feelings. Both avoid vulnerability. Both find it difficult to have actual intimacy with someone. Both can be self-centered for sure. Yeah, but the narcissist is self-centered from a place of ego and pride and power. The avoidant is fiercely independent because they fear losing their autonomy. They've been hurt badly in the past, and they think the only way to prevent me from getting hurt in the future is to never let someone in again. Oh. At the end of the day, the goal isn't to label or diagnose someone. The goal is learning about what love looks and feels like to you. The goal is building up our own self-esteem and not looking for someone else to complete us or validate our worth. The goal is facing our fear of abandonment head on and acknowledging what we know we deserve in relationships, and then holding to those standards, learning how to detach from toxic situations and set healthy boundaries around disrespect or neglect. Yeah, but won't that push people away? Not the right people.
So incredibly interesting. I enjoy his little shorts that he does. Gets to the point and really, really explains it so incredibly well. Jim says the good doctor is going to need a 2-hour spot, as popular as he seems to be this morning. Yes, this is his second time coming on, and people are very, very much engaged with some amazing questions. So thank you guys so much for the interaction and the questions. And certainly, your questions are welcome, and your participation is very much welcome as well. So next time we're going to focus specifically on children and how to be better at seeking out effective means of disciplining our children. So we're going to talk about children and disciplining and some adverse childhood effects and stuff as well. So the conversation continues, mental health and wellness, and learning how to navigate all of the relationships in our lives, not just the romantic relationships, because again, I think the most important relationship ever is the relationship between parent and child. And unfortunately, if you get it wrong, especially as a parent, you end up potentially impacting in a negative way that child's life forever. So we have to, deal with our own trauma, deal with our own issues in order to really help our children become more balanced in life and able to navigate the emotional stresses that come with life a little bit more. So Denny says that divorce is devastating on children and should encourage spouses to act appropriately towards each other. Well, absolutely, it's devastating for everyone, not just children, but adults as well. And, a lot of times, though, it's the only alternative. You can't necessarily stay in a toxic relationship, for example. It is better to leave because the toxicity of the relationship will be worse for the children than the divorce. So sometimes you've got to get both yourself and your children out of unhealthy situations. But ideally, I think it'd be great if people could learn how to co-parent better during divorces. So we'll have to do a whole segment on that, like how to be, super co-parenting individuals as opposed to going at each other and hating each other and making that toxicity evident to your children as well. So good point. Miss Aline says Dr. Carlos has so much knowledge and explains in layman's terms so everyone can understand what he's saying. And that's what we loved about him. From the first day he came on the show, I'm like, wow, we need you as a regular feature because yes, he is absolutely, his communication skills, the way he explains things is just very, very easy to engage and to understand. All right. Jim said earlier, I believe that everyone needs some form of companionship. We weren't created to be alone. It doesn't always have to be sexually romantic, but everyone needs that genuine and loving hug. I've heard at least a 20-second hug does many things for the health of your body. And you're absolutely right in terms of that, Jim. And I think the point really there is that we have to be mindful of the fact that we're creatures, the humans are creatures who require, we bond, we require communities, we require families. That is how we were designed. So, yes, we require some degree of interaction. There might be individuals who, require less of it than others, but we are pack animals for lack of a better word. And we require the pack, not just for physical security and safety, but for our psychological and emotional well-being as well. There's lots and lots of evidence that demonstrates that is important. Like you say, the power of a smile, the power of a hug, just squeezing somebody's hand, these are things that human beings require and need for our survival. So some really, really strong evidence there. Shaka Zulu says, hey, Auntie Sandy, how did you discover or find Dr. Carlos? Well, this is such a good question. And he actually came through a family member. So I told you guys that we have a cousin, Dr. Gadari, in Florida. That's technically Marlon's cousin, but hey, my cousin now too. And so he's a professional in his own right. And as I was starting to build out the CMR TV schedule and the types of shows that we wanted to have on the program, a mental health show was always, always at the top of my list. We've actually also invited the Alice Panton Foundation to have their own separate show where they could bring on their own experts and talk. And, we're still waiting to hear from them to see if they're interested in doing that. But we want to invite different types of people to participate in this, right? In the CMR TV journey. And so as I was thinking about mental health and wellness, just one day, Mark said to me, Dr. Gadari, to the rest of you, he said to me, hey, I have someone who you might want to talk to. Let's schedule a Zoom call with him because he's my therapist for years. He's my colleague. We were colleagues in school, and he is just absolutely amazing. Caribbean people, and I'll tell you what, I was a bit surprised that big burly Mark admitted to having therapy, and having a therapist that he loved and trusted. And so in typical Caribbean fashion, we see men as, oh, you guys don't need therapists, or you don't go to therapists, and so forth and so on. So I was pleasantly pleased when he said that he does. And in fact, him and I have a lot of very deep and meaningful conversations around parenting styles, and how we can be firm but gentle parents. You know, you don't have to juck your children up and beat them and whatever, and yell and scream at them and whatever. So we always have these deeper conversations anyway about relationships, and you know, just how we can be better people, better versions of ourselves. So when he mentioned this potential of meeting Dr. Carlos and doing an introduction, I was all over it. I was like, sure. And then when I met him and talked to him and we did that first episode, I can tell you, Shaka Zulu, that the response from that episode was nothing short of phenomenal. It was absolutely amazing. And that was the moment that I knew. You can have all sorts of people on your show, but to have the right person that really, really connects with the community, and that, you know, he's just phenomenal the way he responds to questions, right? So I knew that I felt an immediate, like, yep, he's the one. Love at first sight. He's the one. But more importantly, all of you were messaging me, commenting. Like one person said, oh my God, this is the best mentally that I've felt in years after hearing Dr. Carlos this morning. So I thought, wow, if I can make even a small little contribution in that way in our community. Listen, you guys are here for it, for all the gossip, the salaciousness, when we telling people off, you're here for that. What about when we want to have some healing moments as well? When we want to have some cold hard truths about who we are, about our emotions and our well-being, our emotional well-being, how we're raising our children, how we're interacting with each other. You know, what kind of friend are you? How are we doing in terms of, you know, our personal relationships, like all of these things. So I think it is my vision for CMR TV is really that it's going to be a holistic journey. There's something there for everyone, right? Whether you're into just pure politics or those types of shows, whether you're into mental health and wellness, you're an artist, musician, you want to sit down and watch church services on Saturday or Sunday because you can't get out anymore. We're going to offer all of those things as part of the lineup. And I'm so excited. I'm trying to contain my excitement, actually, because even today, as I'm speaking to you guys, my technical people, Glenn, for example, is in the background messaging me and updating me like, okay, we've got the VOD sorted out now. We've got this, we've got that, you know, here's a training video. And there's so many moving parts to it, but it's going to be absolutely amazing. I am like, my heart and soul is in this project. Just like when I launched CMR, you know, we didn't start out with a show. We just started with the online platform, but I've always said it's a passion, not a paycheck. And I'm passionate about certain things in my life and in my work. You know, as many of you know, I have multiple degrees. I could have been a lawyer and I could have done this and whatever. And I'm right where I'm supposed to be, because I don't get up in the mornings and question my passion for what I do with CMR. And I think that's why, even when I'm tired, I don't feel like I'm here, right? It's only if I'm really, really sick and I practically have no voice that you're not going to see me here. Otherwise, I am here for it. So thank you guys so much, Shaka and everybody else, for honestly, you know, being part of the journey as well, because you guys, I'm doing it for you guys. I'm not doing it for myself. You know, I'm here for you guys. And I just absolutely love that you're here for each other and you're here for me. And, you know, we have this symbiotic relationship when it comes to CMR. CMR isn't just news and media. That's part of what we do, right? That's the website. That's part of what we do. But we're more about community and a much greater connection. And so even our tagline for CMR TV is really about building community through the content that we offer. And so thank you guys very, very much. I can't say thank you enough for engaging and always welcoming amazing guests like Dr. Carlos on the program. So he'll be back. I'm not sure about next week. And then the following week, I'm actually going to be off on holiday. And, you know, whilst I can do the show probably just equally as well, when I'm on vacation and stuff like that, I really find it necessary to disengage for the sake of my own relationships, to take some time off and to do nothing except focus on family fun, spending time with Gigi, where I don't have to say to her, oh my gosh, I got to go check a message, or I got to put up an article, or, I can't disengage 100%, but I try to get to like at least the 90 percentile if I can. And so this is important to me because being a present parent is important to me. A lot of us struggle because we didn't have that in our lives. We might have had parents who were not there, who were working all the time. We didn't see our parents, whatever. I can't make that mistake with the one daughter that I have. I only have one child. And so I have to be as present as I possibly can. I am a working mother. I work very, very hard. And yes, I do have my own business. But when she says to me, Mom, I need you to come and lie down with me, when we talk about all these avoidance theories and stuff, I have to listen as a parent and understand. Get off the computer. There's nothing more important. She says she needs me. I have to go there and show up and be present. And it's such simple things. Last night she said to me, Mom, I need you to come and lie down with me. And she would not go to bed until I did that. So I just recorded a segment of Court Matters. It's another show that we're doing. And I got off of that and I went and I laid in bed with her until she fell asleep because she needed me in that moment. And so just like we have needs that, need to be fulfilled, or children have needs, and we've got to be able to put our children's needs before our own. And I think that that's what makes you a parent that is really, really trying. Nobody's perfect. We all have our moments where we could certainly show up more, we could show up better. And even my husband, he needs me a lot. Sometimes I joke with him and I'm like, I only have one child. You're not my second child, right? But he needs me. And so when he says, I need you, come to bed early, wink, wink. I have to make time for those things as well. So I'm going to jump in the shower and go to bed early, honey child, because trying to make sure that we're showing up for each other and we're showing up for our partners is also equally important. So thank you, Miss Sharon. She says it was a nice show to listen to today. Yeah, like I said, different shows for different people. Not every day you're going to want to listen, even to me, but I think that these are the types of shows that I really enjoy doing equally as much as I like all the salacious stuff. Tomorrow's program, please tune in. Speaking of health and wellness, we're going to continue the conversation on Point Siena Rehabilitation Center. And I'm going to continue to tell you guys the truth of where we've gone wrong, because I'm a firm believer, unless we accept where we've gone wrong, we can't ever fix anything in life. And we have got to fix this for the sake of our people, our children, our future generations. We have got to fix this. So tune in. The former minister, Sabrina Turner, will be on the program, and we're going to kind of dissect where we started to go wrong with this project, because it's not something that just happened last week or even last year. It has long been, even before former Minister Turner was there, it has long been a problem. And I implore my Caymanian people, this is why you've got to start thinking smarter about who you elect to public office. Because if we're not electing the people who really understand what we need, who understand that it's more important to get it right from the onset in terms of the plan, the management of these institutions and departments and so on, and programs, as opposed to putting a little check mark next to a box and having a plaque on a wall to say, oh, this facility was opened by Minister so-and-so, right? I find it hard to understand that we continue to elect people who are disconnected from us as a community, who don't get any of those things. They jump up, throw out a couple words about finance and this and that, and we think, oh yeah, let's elect them to public office. And it's just like, we're going to be lost. We're already lost to a certain extent, but we're going to get even more lost, folks, if we continue on this path. And it does start with addressing issues in the civil service. It also starts with addressing issues with the elected members. And even as a community, what is it that we actually want? Many of you were happy about a ribbon cutting ceremony because you didn't realize what was actually occurring. So I'm afraid to say that we've got to elevate the level of discourse in this community in order to, to get there and to do better, right? So, stick with me. There's lots of reasons why we are where we are. But if we're not able to be honest about how we got here, how we keep making these poor decisions, and how do we make better decisions in the future, then we will never get any better. That's just my opinion. All right, Marjorie says, wonderful advice. Dr. Lockhart said that he will contact you. Thank you so much. Darlene says, Dr. Lockhart is a great man who really cares. And, that certainly makes a difference. That certainly makes a difference. And, at some point, I don't think he's going to speak to me right now because all of this is a bit crazy and there's a lot of moving parts to this. But I think at some point we will have an opportunity to sit down and do a one-on-one interview with Dr. Lockhart that undoubtedly will be very, very insightful. So thank you, Dr. Lockhart, for all the amazing work that you do and you have done for many, many years in the community. All right, my beautiful people, I have got to get to work, honey chill. CMR TV is not going to happen by itself. So thank you all so very, very much. Appreciate your continued love and support. And yeah, that's all I got. That's all she wrote. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Take care. Until then, please be safe.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM. Cayman's #1 talk show is live weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Never miss an episode again. Watch anytime on CMR's Facebook and YouTube channels for the latest show episodes. Don't forget to follow us online on our social media channels. And visit CaymanMarlRoad.com for all the latest news and community happenings.